my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. This one will probably be pretty short. Today, I am reviewing To Fall is to Fly by Brighton Hugg. This is a chapbook consisting of poetry and short stories. If you don't know, a chapbook is basically a kind of anthologic collection of shorter fiction or prose, usually no more than 40 pages, and it is very often used as a first stepping stone into other works. And so that's kind of what I went into this thinking, that this was a stepping stone, and I'm glad I did, because it probably might not have had as charitable a response to this as I did, because right off the bat, I found a lot of the poetic rhyme schemes and schemes of the entire thing in general kind of clumsy. In effect, every poem has a rhyme scheme, every poem rhymes, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Plenty of poets have their entire work done in rhyme. However, it definitely felt like it was restrictive to the author, because there were certain moments in poetry, like in poems in this, where it was like, that's not really the word that best describes the feeling you were leading up for in that stanza, but it's the one that rhymes. Like, it felt a little bit more trapped, or there were lines where I could see where a that or a who had been slipped in because that line wasn't quite enough syllables long to match the lines before it. And a lot of the rhymes were very basic rhymes, like the words love and above were rhymed in multiple different poems, or I think in one case, like, the word be was rhymed with itself, and not in like that way where, oh, it's actually the word before that word that's rhyming, because the author knows how to do that. There's another poem that uses the phrase riling up and piling up, but literally just the word be was rhymed with itself in a later poem. So there were some elements that made me wonder what the author could do if they got out of that and explored poetry that was a little bit more elastic and didn't rhyme, because in poetry, you really don't want to see the effort. Like, obviously, poems take effort. They take editing, they take all of that. But you want the reading experience to be like a flow. Like, of course, this poem was destined to exist in this form. That's just how it was supposed to be. But you could kind of see the work in this one. However, there was a lot of potential and a lot of the specific wordplay within the poems. My favorite line was, what I remember, the world is a novel and I'm just a letter. I like that imagery, and some others going on, especially a later poem that was talking about renegades at the masquerade, and like that was really nice, interesting and clever world building with just a few lines, I felt. But overall, it definitely felt a little bit more at the beginning of a poet's career than later on. But like I said, that's usually what chapbooks are for. So they're meant to get your feet wet and get into it. But what gave me more pause, and what you kind of can't explain away with the chapbook viewpoint, is the poetry in this gets very dark, and that's not anything new. Modern poetry reads a lot like someone's personal thoughts, just that you just happen to come across. So I wasn't necessarily put off by the darkness specifically. There was a lot of talk about depression and suicide ideation, so if that's something you struggle with, please be on the lookout for that. But there seemed to be a theme, both in some specific, or at least one specific short story, and in the kind of curation of the poetry collection itself, that hinted at the idea of a romance as solving depression or suicide ideation. There was one specific short story in which there was this couple that always met in the elevator, and they both had crushes on each other, or as the story explained it, loved each other without knowing it, and they were too shy to actually say anything to each other. And then the man of the pair takes his own life, and the woman is meant to be like, oh, she should have said something. She should have, they should have fallen in love. Now, obviously, this is not me saying that suicide cannot be prevented with people reaching out. It 100% can. The thing is, though, is that the reaching out to prevent a suicide is meant to be done to get that person professional help, not to fall in love with them and then expect that love to save them. Which is how it came across. It wasn't a case of, oh, I wish I had seen his pain and reached out and gotten him help. It's, oh, they should have fallen in love, and that would have solved the problem. And I can't speak to his exact intentions or if maybe something got mixed up along the way, but that theme was kind of reiterated in the curation of the poetry itself. The poems begin very, very dark. The short stories are all very dark. And then later on, it's almost a sudden switch to love poems. Very, very explicitly, very cute, lovey-dovey love poems. And then the poems after that are basically, I'm all good now. And there's literally one where it's basically like, all the holes have been filled. And it's like that setup of dark, 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 suddenly in love, everything's good now, seemed to reiterate that theme from that short story. And again, I don't know how much forethought was put into the creation of this, or if it was just, we're going to have these separate sections and we're just going to label them like this. But it definitely seemed to reiterate the idea of romance as solving depression, which I know is something that a lot of people genuinely believe. But as someone that spends her life working with young trauma survivors, hi, foster parent and BD para here, that's not how it works. And I don't want to be like, oh, the author clearly thinks that, or if it just came across the wrong way, but that's definitely the theme that comes through in this collection. And in general, I think I would have liked to see more of the in-between. I would have liked to see more poetry or short stories focused on someone who was in a dark place and it isn't quite to the full healthy place yet, but they're getting there. They're on the road there. I feel like those poems especially have a very big impact for anyone that's actually struggling through those things, because the dark, dark, dark ones can incite things you don't want, but the good, good, good ones feel like a far off, intangible thing for someone in that dark place. So the murky twilight between the darkness and the light probably for me would have given a lot more flow to the curation of the entire thing. So as it is, I gave the chapbook 3 stars. But like I said, chapbooks are really meant to portray the possibility and the potential of the author more than their having arrived at their fully formed author poetness. There's probably a better way to explain that. But I still think if you like poetry, you would probably still enjoy this one. I preferred the poems to the short stories. A lot of the short stories just felt dark for the sake of being dark, and it didn't feel like there was much rhyme or reason to the darkness early on. But then again, the rhyme or reason might have just been portraying suicide ideation, and that's not something that I have ever had to deal with. I have been very blessed in my life so far that way. So maybe if you have had suicide ideation but aren't gonna be triggered by it, maybe you'll get something out of that portrayal. But regardless, I would still enjoy seeing where this author/poet goes next. I think with some work and some elasticity and some deeper thought to the themes, this could be the beginning of something awesome. As of right now, I am still open to review requests. Might be accepting a lot when this was supposed to be my year of rest, but that's fine. So if you're interested, you can send me an email. That will be down in the description below. Please be sure to check out my review policy. It gives you a little bit more insight on what your request should look like and what my review will be like. Regardless, with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.